my daughter hates me because I chose my husband over her and her brothers. But the truth is, I chose the life I wanted for them over the life I could give them at that time. Hello, Inside Relationship family. Welcome back to yet another thought-provoking and deeply emotional story. Today, we share the journey of a mother fighting to reconnect with her daughter after years of painful silence, guilt, and misunderstanding, but to no avail. If you're new to this channel, we're so glad you found us. Please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you never miss any of our stories. Now, let's get into the story. I became a widow at 29. I had 2 boys and 1 girl. My daughter, Ijeoma, she was the youngest. My late husband, Emeka, people knew him then as Ejiego. He slumped and died. His death was a hard blow. I never truly realized how much I depended on him until he passed. It shattered me. After he was buried, his brothers came and took everything we had, even the house we lived in. My husband had no will, and even if he did, I doubt it would have stopped his family from throwing me and my children out like trash. These were people I once laughed with, encouraged, and supported. A friend in Lagos took us in, but only for 2 months. My children were a handful, even for me. And with the little savings I had, I didn't blame her when she asked us to leave. I had no choice but to send my children to my mother in Enugu. We had a family house there, so I begged her to take them in while I returned to Lagos to hustle. It broke me to leave my kids, but I had no other option. I had to do something if I wanted us to survive. I returned to Lagos. Thankfully, another friend allowed me to squat with her. With the little money my older brother gave me, I started frying puff-puff and buns on a busy street. The business did well. By noon, I was usually sold out. That same friend was a tailor. She agreed to teach me sewing for free. So after selling, I would rush to her shop to learn how to sew. One day, I noticed she had many display clothes that went selling. I asked if I could take them to the main market to try and sell them, and we'd share the profits. She agreed. The first week was rough, but I had mouths to feed. Slowly, I started selling. Then, selling more. Customers started asking for specific styles. That's how I became both a tailor's apprentice and a market trader. Then, I met Mama Ebuka, a regular customer of mine. One day, she told me her only son was returning from Finland and she'd like me to meet him. I told her, Mama, I have 3 children. She waved it off and said, let my son decide. Her son returned. He was kind and straightforward. He said he liked me, especially after everything he'd heard about me, that I was honest and hardworking. But he was clear. He didn't want to raise another man's children. He said he'd support me financially so I could care for them, but they wouldn't live with us. I didn't respond immediately. I was uncomfortable with him not accepting my children, so I asked for time to think. I briefly returned to Enugu to discuss the offer with my mother and siblings. It was the first time I had seen my children in 3 years, so it felt like I was bringing bad news. Ijeoma was about 6 or 7 then. She cried for hours. My sons were confused but said nothing. My sister objected outright. I told them I hadn't decided. Then my mother asked the question that silenced everyone. She asked, are any of you ready to take full responsibility for these children? School, food, clothes, all the way through university. Nobody answered. My siblings all had families. It would have been too much to ask. She looked at me and said, ask the man if the children can visit sometimes. Think about their future, not just your guilt. When I returned to Lagos, I asked him, and he said yes. He went back to Finland and later sent money for the traditional rites. Months later, we had a court marriage. It took almost a year for my visa to process, but while we waited, he supported me. I changed schools for my boys, paid my mother more, and visited my children more often. I finally arrived in Finland in 2005. It was another world entirely. Cold, quiet. I felt like I didn't belong, like I'd made a mistake. For over a year, I did nothing but sit at home. Communication with Nigeria was difficult. Cell phones weren't common yet. I suggested to my husband that I could start offering home services, cooking and cleaning. At first, he wasn't comfortable with it. But when our triplets came in 2007, 2 boys and a girl, I knew I had to do something. After giving birth, I started cooking for people in the African community. When the kids started daycare, I added house cleaning. With my husband's help, he later got certified as a healthcare aide. It wasn't easy. I hadn't taken exams in years, but I managed. Slowly, I started earning better. But things weren't easy enough to bring my children to Finland, though we were able to comfortably take care of them from here. Then, in 2013, my husband lost his job. Our visas were tied to his work permit, and we were at risk of losing our status. With a friend's help, he got temporary work in Sweden. We relocated while waiting for permanent permits. While there, I got a report that Ijeoma had been bullied in school. It was serious. She was hospitalized. I couldn't fly back. It was too expensive. We had little savings. I was angry, bitter, and helpless. In Sweden, I started braiding hair to make ends meet. I'd never taken braiding seriously before, but in Sweden, it became my saving grace. I earned enough to support my children back home and feed the ones with me. 6 months later, I returned to Finland for immigration purposes. The plan was for my husband and the kids to join me soon. Then tragedy struck. One of my triplets, my only daughter in the set, drowned. I felt my world crash. I was broken. My husband sank into depression. But bills don't wait for grief. Life doesn't pause. We buried her, and I kept going. Meanwhile, Chinedu, my eldest son, paused his university education. I paid for him to do a mechanic apprenticeship. He loved cars. Uchachukwu, my second son, gained admission a year later, 2015, so both my sons had to start university at the same time. It was expensive to sponsor 2 boys at once. My husband helped so much. Though he was still in Sweden, he sent money. Eventually, Chinedu got a scholarship with a car company in Nigeria. Uchechukwu got a medical scholarship to Russia. It felt like God was finally rewarding the years of struggle. But Ijeoma, she drifted further away. In 2016, my mother died. I returned to Nigeria for the burial, my first time back in 10 years. I saw my elder son. I was proud. I grieved missing their childhoods, but I was glad they turned out well. Meanwhile, a few weeks before returning to Nigeria in 2016 for my mom's burial, Ijeoma disappeared. We spent so much money and effort trying to find her, thinking she was kidnapped, only for her to casually show up with a man 3 days to my mom's funeral. I was glad to see her, but I was also furious, very furious. When I tried to correct her, she shouted at me in public. She said I should go back to my husband, that the real mother who raised her was dead, and that she only came to mourn her. It broke me. She had ways of humbling me, if that's the right word to use. My daughter looked exactly like me, only taller, younger, and colder. When I saw her, I felt like screaming. I was happy, I was sad, I felt every type of way. Normally, I used to confide in my husband about Ijeoma, but I eventually stopped. He always looked guilty, and I didn't want him blaming himself for things that weren't entirely his fault, even though at the beginning, he was clear that he didn't want anything to do with my children. Still, he had always been generous to them. Even though he only met them once during our court marriage, he made consistent efforts over the years to communicate and support them. But Ijeoma, she ignored him just as she ignored me. In 2020, Chinedu graduated. My husband sponsored my trip and even Chinedu's trip to Finland for the holiday. He also offered to bring Ijeoma until we discovered her secret. I visited her university, Uniport, with Chinedu when I returned for his graduation. One of her friends told us Ijeoma didn't live on campus. She lived with her husband. I was shocked. I asked her to explain. She said Ijeoma had gotten married over a year earlier. She didn't even inform her brothers. She lied to her in-laws that she was an orphan. That's how she bypassed traditional rites. Was I that bad of a mother that my own daughter didn't want me to witness her wedding? I called and called. She never picked. Chinedu and Uchechukwu visited Finland in 2021 for a family reunion. Ijeoma ignored every invite. I didn't know she hated me this much. I only learned through Facebook that I was now a grandmother. Throughout 2023, I tried reaching out. Not even a hi. In November 2024, she finally picked after Chinedu liaised with her husband. But it wasn't a pleasant call. She shut me down at every attempt to ask about her life or my grandchildren. She said, "Since you chose your husband over me, I will continue to choose everyone else over you. Don't ever call me again." And she hung up. I don't know what else to do. I truly want to be a part of my daughter's life, and I am not ready to give up on her. What a sad story. I can't help but wonder, is the daughter's anger towards her mother still justified at this point? Personally, I feel for this mom. She made hard choices in tough circumstances, and it seems like she never stopped trying. But what do you think? Family, share your thoughts and suggestions in the comment section. Let's learn from each other.